and welcome back to Love Your Food. This week we're doing a quick and simple one. This is blue cheese gougères. So this is basically a choux pastry that is typically done in a savory style instead of a sweet style as you would with something like profiteroles or eclairs, and usually with the addition of cheese. And we're using blue cheese, although Gruyère is pretty traditional, and here's our ingredients. So we've got some flour, some water, some butter, a little bit of salt, and some eggs. That's for the choux pastry. And we're going to be seasoning that with some black pepper and two different kinds of cheese. We have blue cheese and we have some Parmesan as well. So the first thing we want to do is get our mise en place ready. So we're going to take the peppercorns and we're just going to burr mix those for a little while. It's okay if they're a little bit chunky. We don't need them to be a super fine powder or anything. We're just going to get those ready ahead of time so they're ready to go. Same with our cheese. We want to make sure that we have all of our cheese grated or broken up before we start making the choux pastry because it goes quite quickly. So there's the Parmesan. We're going to use about that much Parmesan. We're going to use all of this blue cheese, and we just want to break that up into little crumbs to get started so that it's all ready to go once the choux pastry is ready to go as well. Now, as I said, more traditional for this would be something like Gruyère cheese, but whatever cheese you like to use in here is fine. Emmental, something like a Compté would be delicious. We really enjoyed this blue cheese one. It went very well with the beef stew that we served it with. So lots of different options for that. So now we can get going once everything's ready with our choux pastry. So choux pastry is pretty simple. It's a batter made by boiling flour in a mixture of water and butter. So there's our water and salt. And we're just going to melt that butter. We've got it on the induction burner here so that it goes quite quickly. You can see right away that butter starts melting. We're just going to let that melt a little bit, and then we're going to add the eggs once that's all together. But we want to make sure there's no bits of shell or anything in the eggs. We want this to be nice and smooth and delicious. So we're just going to crack the eggs into a bowl so that we can check for shell bits or anything. So here you go, the butter is all nicely melted now. Now we're not trying to emulsify these together or anything, it's oil and water, they're not going to mix. We just want to make sure that there are no bits of butter left unmelted in there, so we're just going to let that slightly come to the boil here. And then we're going to add our flour. So once that just starts to boil, we're going to add our flour in. And from here, things start going quite quickly. So, of course, we want to cook this flour all the way through, but it's also going to absorb all those, the water and the butter together. So we're definitely going to take a look at mixing them as quickly as we can here. You also don't want to get a whole lot of gluten development, although you do need some for this, because these are going to puff up and they need to hold their shape a little bit. A spoon might be better for this part, so that it doesn't get caught in the whisk like this. You can see here. Just going to get everything out of the whisk and finish this mixing portion with a wooden spoon. Now we've taken this off the heat. It's about as cooked as we need it to be at this point. Now remember, we are going to bake this, so it's going to finish cooking in the oven. So once we get to this point, this is about as far as we need to go with this. You just want to make sure that there are no bits of flour that are not mixed in. You want to make sure there's no unmixed anything. It's got to be well combined at this point. We're going to give the eggs a quick beat before we mix them in. And we're just going to start this in the pan. We actually do want something with a little bit higher sides to mix the eggs in properly, because once those eggs go in, this mixture becomes quite sort of sloppy. It'll slosh around a lot, and this pan probably not quite high enough in the sides for that. So we're going to add our eggs. Now everything in here is still warm, but it's been taken off the heat. It's not hot anymore, so we've got a little bit of time to work. And we're going to start by sort of mashing that all together with the eggs and giving it a good stir. And then we're going to get back into using the whisk. So here's where we're turning this into, from what looks more like a dough into what looks more like a batter. And you want to just start in here with the whisk, but really what we want to do is get this into a bowl where we have a little bit more room to work, because if we keep it in that sort of low-sided pan, it's going to slop everywhere. You're going to get it all over your stove or your counter or whatever. So good idea to move this into a higher-sided vessel at this point and really get that whisk going, because it's got to go pretty hard to get everything well combined. And here you go. You see Chef Caleb is giving everything a really good whisking until it gets to about this consistency. And you can see the batter has really come together. A little bit of elbow grease required, but it's all come together really, really nicely. So here is our final batter. It's very, very sticky. You can see it's quite thick. We're going to add in our cheese now, and we've also added in the black pepper. You don't want to add in the paper, but we do want to add in all of our cheese. And it does take quite a lot. It will hold a fair amount of cheese, so you can get a lot of that flavor in there. It's quite lovely. And if you're using something like a Gruyère or an Emmentaler or something like that, just grate it. That's all you need to do if it's not going to be something that breaks up like blue cheese does. You can also use something like feta in this for that nice tangy zing. Whatever you feel would work. We're just going to mix that until the cheese is well combined, until it's mixed in there really nicely. And from there, we're just going to make it into our final shape. So we're going to use some spoons and place this on a parchment-lined baking sheet. Now, the amount we're making here will make 6 pretty decent-sized gougères. Typically in restaurants, you'll see these a little bit smaller. We wanted to make them a little bit bigger because, honestly, they're delicious. I just wanted to eat a big one. They're fantastic. So that's going to go into our preheated oven. And you don't want to move them around too much, honestly. We're just going to let them sit still. We set them in the oven for about half an hour, and they came out perfect. You can see here they're just golden, a little bit brown on the edges, perfectly crispy, really, really nice. And then once they're room temperature enough, still warm, but cool enough to handle, you can see they're beautiful, they're puffy, they're crispy on the outside. They've got that nice choux pastry texture, and they're cooked all the way through, and they're absolutely delicious. So that's it. That's the whole thing. Really, really simple. Absolutely delicious. Goes as an amazing side dish with a lot of different kinds of foods. And we hope that you'll give this one a try. So if you like this recipe, please do like and subscribe. And if you have any recipes you'd like to see Chef Caleb try on the channel, please let us know in the comments below. And remember to love your food.